I stood in my parents' garage staring at my sister Rachel, who had just gotten out of her car wearing designer clothes I had never seen before. Expensive leather jacket, new sneakers, shopping bags from luxury stores. Her face glowed with health. No paleness, no weakness, no exhaustion. She looked like someone who had just spent $8,000 of stolen money on herself. "Where is grandmother's necklace?" I asked, while holding up my phone with the empty blue velvet case photographed on the screen. Rachel's expression shifted from guilty surprise to cold defiance. "I sold it. So what?" My parents appeared in the garage doorway behind her. My mother looked away. My father studied the concrete floor. I realized in that moment that all three of them had been lying to me for an entire year. The fake illness, the stolen inheritance, the $22,000 I had sent for medical bills that never existed. And they felt absolutely no remorse. If you have ever discovered that your whole family was running a scam on you while you drained your savings to help them, subscribe, because what happened next landed them in court and gave me back my life. A few days before this confrontation, I sat in my small Chicago apartment on a Tuesday morning, drinking coffee and reviewing reports for my marketing coordinator job when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Mr. Johnson's name. My stomach immediately dropped. Mr. Johnson was my parents' neighbor for over 20 years. We had become close 2 years ago when I lived with my parents for 8 months to care for my dying grandmother. During that time, I helped his wife Carol through her chemotherapy treatments. He was a good man who minded his own business unless something was seriously wrong. I answered quickly. His voice came through uncomfortable and apologetic. "Emma, I need to tell you something, and I have been struggling with whether to call you. I was at your parents' house yesterday fixing their water heater. I was in the garage and I overheard your sister on her phone. She was laughing and telling someone she sold that old necklace from the boxes for $8,000. She said you would never know because you never come home anyway." He paused and I heard him take a breath. "Emma, your parents were right there in the room. They heard everything. They said nothing." My hands went cold. I set down my coffee mug carefully because I was suddenly shaking. "What necklace?" I asked, even though I already knew. Mr. Johnson sighed. "I don't know exactly, but she said it was from your storage boxes in their garage." There was only one valuable item in those boxes, my grandmother's sapphire necklace, the one she had specifically left to me in her will. Let me explain why this hit me like a physical blow. 2 years ago, my grandmother had been diagnosed with advanced Alzheimer's disease. She needed 24-hour care. My parents both worked full-time. My sister Rachel visited exactly twice in 18 months and stayed less than an hour each time because watching someone deteriorate was too depressing for her. I put my career on hold and moved back home for 8 months. I fed my grandmother when she forgot how to eat. I bathed her when she became confused. I read to her from her favorite books, even when she looked at me like a stranger. My grandmother died on a freezing February morning. 3 weeks later, the family lawyer read her will. She left me her sapphire necklace that had been passed down through 3 generations. The appraisal said $12,000, but the monetary value meant nothing compared to what she wrote in her letter. "Emma, you stayed when no one else would. You sacrificed everything to make sure I was not alone. This necklace is yours and only yours. Do not let anyone convince you to give it away. You matter just as much as everyone else in this family." I had cried reading those words because my grandmother saw something I had been too close to see. After her funeral, I packed her belongings into boxes and stored them at my parents' house because I was moving to Chicago for a new job. My apartment was tiny, and I planned to get them later. I trusted my parents completely. That had apparently been a massive mistake. I thanked Mr. Johnson and asked him directly, "Why are you telling me this?" His voice was quiet. "Because Carol and I watched you care for your grandmother with so much love. And we have watched your family take advantage of you for years. You deserve to know the truth." After I hung up, I sat frozen at my desk for 20 minutes. Mr. Johnson's words echoed in my head. For years. He was right. This pattern had been going on my entire life. I remembered my 10th birthday. My mother took Rachel shopping and came home with 3 bags of new clothes for her. When I asked about my birthday present, my mother handed me a card with $20 inside. You're so responsible with money, Emma. I know you'll spend this wisely." Rachel wore one of her new outfits to my birthday dinner that evening. Nobody seemed to notice I was the one turning 10. My 13th birthday, I made honor roll for the 3rd year in a row. I brought home my report card excited to show my parents. My father glanced at it and said, "Very nice," before turning back to his newspaper. That same week, Rachel passed a math test she had been failing. My parents took her out for ice cream to celebrate. When I asked if I could come, my mother said, "This is Rachel's special moment. You get good grades all the time. Let her have this." When I was 16, I saved money from my part-time job for 6 months to buy a used car. The day I finally had enough, my father told me he had used that money to fix Rachel's car that she had crashed texting while driving. "She needs reliable transportation for school," he explained. "You can take the bus. You're more responsible anyway." Rachel never thanked me. She never even acknowledged that my money paid for her repairs. College was when the pattern became impossible to ignore. My parents paid Rachel's full tuition to a private university. When I got accepted to the same school, they told me they could not afford 2 tuitions. I could either go to community college or take out loans. I worked 3 jobs and graduated with $32,000 in debt. Rachel graduated debt-free and moved back home where my parents charged her no rent. When I suggested I could also live at home while paying off my loans, my mother said they did not have room. Rachel needed her space. The worst part was not the money or the favoritism. The worst part was that they never saw anything wrong with it. In their minds, Rachel needed more because she struggled more. I was capable and strong and responsible, which somehow meant I deserved less. They never considered that maybe I struggled too. I just did it quietly, while Rachel made sure everyone knew when she needed help. After I hung up with Mr. Johnson, I sat there processing everything. Then I called my parents' house. My mother answered cheerfully. "Emma, how are you, sweetheart?" I kept my voice calm. "Is grandmother's necklace still in my storage boxes?" The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds too long. Then my mother said, "I don't know, honey. I haven't looked in your boxes." "Why?" I felt my stomach drop further. "I want to come check this weekend. Is Rachel there? Can I talk to her?" Another pause. "She's at a doctor's appointment." That answer made my blood run cold. For the past year, my parents had been calling me every month telling me Rachel was seriously ill. Chronic condition, expensive treatments. She could not work. She needed help with medical bills. I had been sending $1,200 every single month without question, because what kind of terrible person refuses to help their dying sister? I had sent $14,400 over 12 months. Plus another $2,400 in emergency payments when my mother called crying about specialist visits and medications. My savings account that had contained $31,000 a year ago now showed $8,400. I had sacrificed everything to help my sick sister. Turned down a promotion that required travel because I needed to be available for family emergencies. Ended a relationship because my boyfriend got tired of me canceling dates to deal with Rachel's crises. Developed stress insomnia from working extra freelance projects to afford the monthly payments. And now Mr. Johnson was telling me Rachel had been laughing about stealing my inheritance. And my mother just told me Rachel was at a doctor's appointment. I needed to see for myself what was really happening. I made a decision. I called my boss and took an emergency personal day. Then I booked the next available flight home. Several hours later, I was in a rental car driving toward my parents' house, with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. During the drive, I kept thinking about the past year. Every phone call from my mother, every text from Rachel thanking me for the money. Every time I had chosen to send money instead of saving for my own future. I had believed I was helping my sick sister. I still believed it. I just needed to check on my grandmother's necklace and make sure it was safe. I thought about my 25th birthday last year. I had been planning a small celebration with friends. 2 days before my birthday, my mother called crying. Rachel had been rushed to the emergency room. The medical bills would be devastating. Could I help? I canceled my birthday plans and wired her $800. My friends eventually stopped inviting me places. They thought I was flaking when the truth was I was funding my sister's supposed medical crisis. I thought about 3 months ago when my mother sent me a family photo. Everyone smiling at some gathering I had not been invited to. I zoomed in on Rachel in the background. She was wearing expensive clothes. Designer jeans, a leather jacket that looked brand new. For someone supposedly too sick to work, she looked well dressed. I had pushed the thought away. Told myself maybe the clothes were old. Maybe she was having a good day. Maybe I was being paranoid and selfish for questioning whether my sister was really suffering. I thought about every sacrifice I had made. The job opportunity in Seattle I turned down because my family needed me close. The relationship that fell apart because I could not commit to building a life with someone when my family kept pulling me back. The apartment I could not afford to upgrade because I was sending money home every month. All of it because I thought my sister needed me. The rental car felt too small. My chest felt tight. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I told myself I was overreacting. Mr. Johnson must have misheard. The necklace would be right where I left it. Rachel was sick and needed help, and I was a terrible person for doubting her even for a second. I pushed down the small voice in my head that whispered, maybe I should have questioned things sooner. Both my parents' cars were in the driveway when I arrived. I used my key and let myself in quietly. My mother was in the kitchen and jumped when she saw me. Her face went pale. Her eyes darted toward the stairs like she was calculating whether to warn someone I was here. "Emma, you didn't call. What are you doing here?" Her voice came out too high and too fast. I kept my expression neutral. "I came to check my storage boxes. I finally have room for them in my apartment." My father appeared from the living room. "You flew here just for boxes? We could have shipped them." I smiled without warmth. I wanted to make sure everything was still there. Things disappear sometimes. My mother's hand holding a dish towel started trembling. I walked toward the garage door and my father moved to block me. "Emma, maybe we should talk first." I looked at him directly. "Talk about what?" Mr. Johnson heard Rachel laughing about selling something from my storage boxes. "I need to check if my grandmother's necklace is still there." My father's face went pale. My mother turned away. Neither of them said, "Of course it's there," or "Rachel would never do that." Their silence told me Mr. Johnson had been telling the truth. I pushed past my father into the garage. My storage boxes sat stacked where I had left them. I opened the first box and found the blue velvet case that should have held grandmother's necklace. I lifted the lid. Empty. I pulled out my phone and took photos from multiple angles with timestamps. My hands shook, but I forced them steady. That was when I heard a car pull into the driveway. A car door slammed. Rachel's voice called out something to someone. I walked to the garage door that opened to the driveway. Rachel was getting out of her car. She wore an expensive leather jacket I had never seen. Designer jeans, brand new sneakers. She carried shopping bags from stores I could not afford. Her skin glowed. Her hair shone. She looked perfectly healthy. I stopped breathing for a second. This was my sister who had been supposedly sick for a year. The sister I had been sending money to every month for medical treatments. She looked like someone who had never been sick a day in her life. She looked like someone who had just spent the day shopping with $8,000 of stolen money. She saw me and froze mid-step. For 1 second, her face showed pure guilt. Then it hardened into defiance. I held up my phone showing her the photo of the empty jewelry case. "Where is grandmother's necklace?" Rachel recovered quickly. "What necklace?" Her voice came out too casual. I stepped closer. "The sapphire necklace grandmother left to me in her will, the one that was in my storage box, the one you sold for $8,000. Her eyes widened. "Who told you that?" Not a denial, just anger that someone had told me. I pulled out my phone and called Mr. Johnson on speaker. "Mr. Johnson, can you repeat what you told me yesterday?" Mr. Johnson's voice came through clear. "Rachel, I heard you tell someone you sold Emma's necklace for $8,000. You said she would never find out." Rachel's face flushed red. "You were spying on me?" Mr. Johnson said quietly. "I was fixing the water heater. You were talking loudly on the phone." I ended the call and looked at Rachel directly. "Did you sell my necklace?" She stared at me for 3 long seconds. Then her expression shifted from defensive to cold. "Yes. So what?" I needed the money. The casual admission stunned me into silence. She actually said it. Out loud. With zero remorse. That was when my parents came out to the garage. My mother immediately tried to smooth things over. "Emma, let's go inside and talk about this calmly." I turned to face all 3 of them. Did you know Rachel sold my necklace?" My father looked at the floor. My mother looked away. Their silence was confirmation. I looked at Rachel standing there in her expensive clothes with shopping bags and glowing skin. Then I looked at my parents. "How long have you known about the necklace?" My father looked at the floor. My mother started. "Emma, Rachel needed—" I cut her off. "No, I'm not talking about need. I'm talking about theft and lies. Because looking at Rachel right now, I have another question." I turned back to Rachel. "You're not sick at all, are you?" Rachel rolled her eyes. "I had a cold last year that lasted a while. Mom thought I should get checked." The doctor said I was fine. My vision actually blurred for a second. "So for 12 months, every time Mom called crying about your medical bills, you were lying?" My mother jumped in. "We weren't lying. We needed to help Rachel financially. She's been struggling." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I turned the screen toward them. I sent her $1,200 every month for a year. That's $14,400, plus another $2,400 in emergency payments. Where did that money go? Rachel shrugged. "I needed new things. You always had everything growing up. It was my turn." The garage spun slightly. I braced myself against the car. "I turned down a promotion for you. I ended a relationship because of your emergencies. I developed insomnia from working extra hours to afford sending you money for an illness that didn't exist." My mother reached for my arm. "Emma, you're being dramatic. We thought you understood that family helps each other." I jerked away from her touch. "Family helps each other. What you did was steal from me. You lied to me every day for a year. You let Rachel sell property that was legally mine, and you feel no guilt at all." My father's voice hardened. "That necklace was stored in our house. Technically, it belonged to us." I laughed, and the sound came out bitter. "Technically, grandmother left it to me in a legally binding will with witnesses. Technically, what Rachel did is called theft. Technically, what you all did is called fraud." I looked at my father and remembered being 14 years old sitting at the kitchen table. I had just found out I made the varsity soccer team. My father was reading the newspaper. I told him my news. He did not look up. He said, "That's nice," and turned the page. 3 minutes later, Rachel walked in and said she got invited to a party. My father put down the paper and gave her $40 for a new outfit. When I asked if I could have money for new soccer cleats, he said, "You don't need anything fancy to play sports. Rachel needs to look nice for social events." I looked at my mother and remembered being 19 and calling from my dorm room. I had just won a scholarship for academic achievement. $5,000. I was so proud. My mother listened and said, "That's wonderful, honey," in the same tone she used when I told her I had done the laundry. Then she told me Rachel needed help moving into her apartment, and could I come home this weekend to help. I drove 6 hours home, helped Rachel move, drove 6 hours back. My mother never mentioned my scholarship again. Looking at them now, I finally understood. They had trained me my entire life to accept less, to need less, to celebrate Rachel and support Rachel and sacrifice for Rachel while expecting nothing for myself. And I had gone along with it because I thought that was what good daughters did. I thought if I was patient and selfless and giving enough, eventually they would see my worth. But they never would. In their eyes, Rachel would always need more, and I would always be capable of giving it. Rachel crossed her arms. "Good luck proving anything. It's just your word against ours." I held up my phone. "Mr. Johnson heard you confess. I have photos of the empty jewelry case. I have every bank transfer I made with your text messages claiming the money was for medical bills. I have grandmother's will, and I'm done pretending this is normal." I walked past all 3 of them to my car. My mother called after me. "Emma, don't do anything rash. Think about the family." I turned back one last time. "I am thinking about family. Grandmother was family. She tried to protect me from you by giving me something that was just mine. You proved her right." I got in my car and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw my mother crying on my father's shoulder, while Rachel stood apart looking annoyed rather than ashamed. I went straight to the police station. The officer who took my report was professional but skeptical. I showed him grandmother's will naming me as recipient of the jewelry. I showed him photos of the empty case. I explained that items bequeathed to me in a legally binding probated will had been stolen and sold. He took copies of everything and gave me a case number. He explained recovering the actual items would be impossible since they were already sold, but I could pursue civil court for monetary value. He also noted that obtaining money through false pretenses could potentially be fraud. I caught my evening flight back to Chicago. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts I did not read until I was home. 49 missed calls, 36 messages. My mother, please answer. We can work this out. My father, you're destroying this family over material things. Rachel, you're being selfish. I needed that money more than you needed jewelry. I blocked all 3 numbers. The next morning, I called the lawyer Mr. Johnson had recommended. Patricia Chen specialized in family law and estate disputes. I met with her that afternoon and presented everything. Grandmother's will with the specific bequest, photos of the empty case, bank statements showing all payments, text messages referencing medical treatments, and the police report. Patricia reviewed the materials and looked up with an expression that said she had seen this before. You have an excellent case. Your grandmother's will is legally binding. Your sister had no right to sell property bequeathed to you regardless of where it was stored. We can sue for the appraised value, which you said was $12,000. We can also pursue action for fraud regarding money obtained under false medical pretenses. That's another $16,800. I asked what realistic outcome I should expect. Patricia was honest. We'll likely get a judgment in your favor. Whether she can pay is another question. Even if she can't pay immediately, the judgment stays on her record permanently. We can garnish wages, we can place liens on property. It follows her until it's paid. I signed the retainer agreement and wrote a check for $2,500 I could barely afford, but I needed them to understand actions have consequences. Patricia filed the lawsuit 1 week later. My sister and parents were served with court documents by a process server. My phone exploded with furious messages before I could block the new numbers. Rachel sent a long text calling me every name she could think of. My mother sent voice messages crying about me tearing the family apart. My father left a voicemail saying I would regret this when I was old and alone. I saved everything and forwarded it to Patricia, who said it would help our case by demonstrating their lack of remorse. 2 weeks after filing, I received an unexpected email from Carol Johnson. She wrote that she had found something belonging to me. She had been walking past my parents' house on trash day and noticed old notebooks in the garbage. She recognized my grandmother's handwriting and pulled them out before the truck came. She had been keeping them safe to return to me. I drove home that weekend to pick them up. Carol hugged me tightly and started crying. Your grandmother was so special. She talked about you constantly. She was so proud of you. I'm so sorry your family did this. We sat in their living room, and she brought out a box containing my grandmother's journals spanning 30 years. I opened one from her final year. The handwriting was shaky, but readable. The entry was dated 6 months before she died. Emma stayed with me today, even though I know she had other plans. She read to me even though I don't always remember who she is. Her sister called to say she was too busy to visit. I'm not surprised. I've watched this pattern their entire lives. Emma gives everything, and her sister takes everything, and their parents enable it. I'm leaving Emma my necklace because she deserves something that is only hers. I hope when I'm gone, she finally learns to put herself first. Reading those words broke something loose in my chest. I sat in the Johnsons' living room and cried harder than I had since grandmother's funeral. Carol sat next to me and let me sob. Mr. Johnson brought tissues and water. These people who were not related to me by blood showed me more kindness than my actual family had shown in years. I drove back to Chicago with the journals secure in my passenger seat. Over the next month, I read every entry. My grandmother had been documenting the favoritism since we were children. She wrote about my mother making excuses for Rachel's failures. She wrote about my father's complete inability to hold Rachel accountable. She wrote about me with such love and concern, noting every sacrifice I made and every time I put my needs last. In one entry from years earlier, she wrote, Emma thinks love means giving everything away until you have nothing left. I wish I could make her understand that real love requires people to give back equally. I'm afraid she'll spend her life being drained by people who only see her as a resource to exploit. I hope she finds the strength to walk away before they destroy her completely. The lawsuit moved forward over the following months. Rachel filed a response denying everything and claiming the necklace had been a family gift. Patricia destroyed that argument with the will and testimony from the lawyer who executed it. My parents initially tried to remain neutral, but eventually supported Rachel's version. Patricia countered with evidence they had no authority to give away items legally bequeathed to me. The judge scheduled a hearing 3 months after we filed. During those 3 months, I rebuilt my life without them in it. I threw myself into work and earned a promotion to senior marketing coordinator with a $15,000 raise. I started therapy to process the betrayal. My therapist helped me understand I had been trained since childhood to believe my worth came from how much I could give others. She helped me see that grandmother's death had given me clarity about who my family really was, underneath the performance. I joined a hiking group and made new friends who knew nothing about my family drama. I went on dates with people who respected my boundaries. I started planning for a future that belonged entirely to me. Slowly, I built a life that felt like mine. The court hearing happened on a cold November morning. I flew home and met Patricia outside the courthouse. My sister, parents, and their lawyer sat on the opposite side. Rachel looked angry and kept shooting glares at me. My parents looked exhausted. The judge reviewed everything: grandmother's will, police report, bank statements, text messages about medical treatments, and grandmother's journals documenting the family dynamic. He listened to both sides. Rachel's lawyer tried to claim I gave money voluntarily as gifts. Patricia presented evidence every payment connected directly to messages referencing specific medical treatments and health crises. She showed photos my mother sent of Rachel looking sick in bed, which we proved were staged to maintain the deception. The judge took 30 minutes to review everything and delivered his ruling. He found in my favor on all counts. Grandmother's will was clear and legally binding. Rachel had no right to sell property bequeathed to me. The judge ordered Rachel to pay me $12,000 for stolen jewelry, plus $10,800 for money obtained through fraud. He also ordered her to return remaining stolen items or pay their value. The total judgment came to $22,800 plus court costs and legal fees, totaling $4,600. Grand total, $27,400. Rachel stood up yelling she could not pay that amount. The judge told her calmly her financial situation was not his concern, and she should have considered consequences before committing theft and fraud. He set up payment plan of $500 per month until satisfied. If she missed payments, I could pursue wage garnishment. Rachel stormed out with my parents following. I stayed in my seat feeling surprisingly calm and empty. Patricia put her hand on my shoulder. You won. Not just legally, but morally. You proved even family can't steal without consequences. I thanked her and flew back to Chicago that afternoon. My family made several attempts to contact me through distant relatives, but I held firm on boundaries. The first $500 payment arrived 6 weeks after judgment. Every month since then, payment has come on time, which tells me either Rachel found a job or my parents are paying for her. Either way, I am slowly being repaid, though no money can restore what was stolen beyond the jewelry itself. 6 months after the hearing, I sit in my Chicago apartment. I can now comfortably afford thanks to my promotion. I have grandmother's journals on my bookshelf and her photo albums on my coffee table. The necklace is gone forever, but I have pieces of her Rachel can never take. Most importantly, I have the clarity grandmother tried to give me through her final gift. She wanted me to understand I mattered, and my life belonged to me. I learned that blood does not make family. Love does. And love requires people to give back, not just take endlessly. My real family is Mr. and Carol Johnson, who risked neighborhood drama to tell me truth. My real family is Patricia, who fought for me. My real family is my therapist and my hiking friends, and the person I'm dating who respects me. I lost the family I was born into, but I gained the family I chose. And that trade was worth every penny of that $27,000 judgment.